Yo, look. All right. Now that we are back streaming live, what is up, everyone? It's your favorite host, LD003, and I'm here with another video. Today I wanted to start the broadcast at 12 o'clock, but I had a few technical difficulties. Today we'll be taking a look at Elon Musk and a few things that he has to say with what's going on. Once we get to back to his X account, I'll show you exactly what we're going to be looking at today. Let's go to Elon Live. And free speech is one of those topics which that's one thing that I do love. He go make sure he has for us is just gives us that opportunity to express ourselves. Well, let's see. Let's start back listening. Uh, this is Elon Musk, anti-Semitism, faith, and free speech.
Um, and now Russell's obviously been rattling the cage, of the powers that be, and these alleged accusations from people we don't know, where there's not an actual lawsuit. Why now? You know, because these things happened many years ago. Why now? And it's like it seems like an odd coincidence that it's happening when Russell is really gaining traction, questioning a lot of conventional wisdom, somebody say, oh well, he's promoting conspiracy theories or whatever, but I think we're running out of conspiracy theories that didn't turn out to be true, um, and so like back to for those out there in the conspiracy theory community, we really need some more material, and because what do we got left here? The conspiracy theorists of the world, we please get creative. We need more material.
So at this point, I want to hand it over to Rabbi Lamb to talk, Elon, with you more about Judaism and faith and anti-Semitism. Sure. Rabbi Lamb, thanks so much for taking up the time here.
Ben, thank you so much. Elon, I don't know how far you got in preschool, but the communities that Ben and I grew up in, we'd call you Balabayas. You're the owner of the house that we're guests in right now. So thank you for having us and for engaging, especially because the topic we're in the middle of discussing is a critical one. And I'll tell you, the funny thing is that I kind of think in some crucial ways this whole topic is to an extent like a red herring. It's a distraction from the conversation serious Jewish people of all backgrounds should be having. And what I mean by that is, on the one hand, combating anti-Semitism is critical. I mean, the Holocaust is still in living memory, crying out loud. But organizations like the ADL, whether they mean to or not, make it seem like that's literally all the Jewish people are about, fighting anti-Semitism. But here's the thing. We are the stewards of quite literally the most influential tradition of wisdom in the history of humanity, beginning with the Hebrew Bible. I mean, like the best-selling book of all time. And those ideas form the backbone of Western civilization. They're at the absolute foundation of the American experiment. So when I reflect on this topic as a whole, the question to me is less whether the ADL is good or bad, or maybe just like irrelevant, but more.
They definitely have an impact on advertisers, I can tell you that.
Right. So I guess like Jewishly, but irrelevant, but more. My question is, how is it possible that we ended up in a situation where the vast majority of human beings, certainly in the U.S., when they think of a Jewish voice, like a voice representing Jewishness, they probably think of like Jonathan Greenblatt, who, you could say he represents no one, but more importantly to me, doesn't even pretend to play in the field of great Jewish ideas and texts. Like most Americans think of someone like that, rather than thinking immediately of some of the great Jewish minds of today, who are household names for people who study Jewish wisdom. on a daily basis, Rabbi Asher Weiss, Rabbi Herschel Schachter. Like, I truly think if we're going to fight anti-Semitism, then of course there's a role for combating those who hate us, but the majority focus should be on, in the technologist space, what you'd call like our core purpose, our core mission, bringing extraordinary Jewish ideas into the societal, moral, and political conversation in a serious fashion. Like, it should be a positive effort.
I agree. Totally.
If you really want to combat anti-Semitism, teach Jewish ideas. Like, send people to visit the greatest repository of Jewish teaching in history, the currently thriving YUTorah.org. Like, actually talk about great Jewish ideas. And that's what I want to model now. And that's where I want to bring you in to the conversation. Like, in many important ways, you're probably the standard bearer in our day of the scientific revolution. You're one of the living heirs of figures like Francis Bacon, Isaac Newton, William Harvey. And it's not an accident that all those figures placed the Hebrew Bible and its commentaries at the center of their work, and they all studied the Hebrew literature quite seriously. And in particular, one of the things they admired about the Bible is the revolutionary idea that human beings are created in the image of God, like in the book of Genesis, because God is the creator, he's an inventor, as it were, and so too are we charged with doing the same. We have to be creative, we have to be innovative. So my question for you is, like, we normally think of faith or biblical religion on the one hand and technological progress on the other as incompatible, or at least like in tension. There's like a whole Silicon Valley episode about this, but is it possible?
I believe I said being religious is borderline illegal in Silicon Valley.
Right, exactly. But like, is it possible that that's like a weird quirk of the 20th? But like, is that maybe like a weird quirk of the 20th century? Like, we really want a robust culture of innovation and technological creativity. So you've said in the past that we need a new philosophy of the future. So would a theory of the human person bearing the divine image of a creative God, of an inventor God, fit that bill? Like, should people in 2020...
Well, it really speaks to my heart, I'd say, because as someone who loves sort of inventing and technology and discovering the truths of the universe, creating wonderful new things that didn't exist before, wonderful new technologies that help people. I think sometimes I hear this among absurd things, people saying like, "Oh, the world today is so terrible." I'm like, you really should read history, okay? Because it's awesome. Let me tell you, you don't want to be in Masada, when the Romans were besieging it. That wasn't fun at all.
Right, the people who actually started on Masada only got to go there once. That was it.
Yeah, exactly. One-way trip, No, they were super badass, and that's why that's why they celebrated today. Like I said, I was there, and I encourage people to visit Masada and visit Israel and visit the various holy sites and see these incredible places for themselves. I've done that twice. I think like just sort of speaking broadly, I think it is good to have a sense of wonder about the universe, about this incredible existence that we have. I think it is. We should be trying to understand it more, trying to understand creation, and we should be building beautiful and amazing new products and technologies that make our lives better and also allow us to explore the universe and see the incredible work of the Creator, however one might define the Creator. Like, we exist. Where did we come from? The Creator of the existence that we live in. I think we want to go out there. We want to explore and see this incredible creation. And sometimes I think, like, whatever you may refer to the Creator as, the universe was created somehow. And I think we should do our best, understand and appreciate this incredible existence of creation.
So I want to run a theory of X by you and see what you think. So the American political experiment is anchored predominantly in the Hebrew Bible, particularly in the book of Deuteronomy. It's by far the most cited work in the political writings of the American founding era, much more than Locke and even more than Montesquieu. And it was because the founders looked to Deuteronomy and saw that it lays out a vision for political order, which all the great political thinkers of the Renaissance called the Hebrew Republic. Now, Deuteronomy's vision of society is based on 4 elements, of which the American founders really explicitly borrowed 3, right? There's a chief executive with limited powers, there are teachers of the law, there's a legislature, and then there's a court system. But there's a 4th element in Deuteronomy that's missing from the American system, and that's the prophet. And you can see why the founders left that out, because it's an engineering nightmare, right? Practically speaking, it's not something you can build into an institution. It's spontaneous. It's like a force that's meant to critique institutions or all of society itself from the outside.
Yeah.
And that's actually precisely why prophets are so important. Healthy societies need a mechanism for reflection and critique from the outside. So you need prophets, but you can't build them. So from an engineering perspective, how do you get them? So my question to you, Elon, is this. If I were making the case for the importance of social media, and X in particular, might this be a place to start? Instead of relying on just a plain free speech argument, we could also say, hey, if we're ever going to identify those crucial voices of outside critique, we need to be willing to, we have to have a high tolerance for a pretty wide range of weirdos and outsiders.
Yeah,
and, you know what I mean? Deuteronomy warns, false prophecy is going to be a real problem. But if you want to find one good prophet, you got to tolerate a lot of bad ones, right?
Yeah, exactly. You got to kiss a lot of frogs before you get the prince. I know what to say except that I agree with what you said.
Meaning, but that way, X wouldn't just be a negative good, right? We're
exactly.
being non-punitive. It would be a positive.
Yeah,
we're looking for something good.
No, we're trying to make the X platform a force for good for civilization. Now, this may sound somewhat high-minded, and some out there may not believe me, but the reason that reason for the acquisition was to help turn, formerly known as Twitter, now X, into being a positive force for civilization, and I felt it was increasingly a negative force. And of course, with the amount of bias and sort of political sort of control, pushing towards values that I think, do not align with probably 90% or maybe even 99% of the world, and that's really that's not good. So the purpose, it wasn't because I thought, well, this is a great way to make tons of money. It's and to make my life easier. I was fully aware that the acquisition of Twitter was financially dubious. Now, at the end of the day, we were with other investors, so I'm going to make sure that ultimately it does pay off for those investors. But it's certainly, I can come into it thinking, wow, I've got a real gold mine of actual, money here. That's not the case. Best case scenario, Twitter historically has been a sort of a non-profit, essentially, meaning they're a non-profit and they didn't make profit. They're supposed to make profit.
I was just going to say, we need to turn it into a for-profit PH.
Yes. So, and I was also aware that I was going to get massive amount of flack. So those,
mission accomplished there.
Yeah, no, exactly. So just to be clear, that hopefully people don't think we have been pretty dumb / deluded to have thought that, wow, this is some easy money and won't result in criticism of acquiring Twitter. That's a hard. So what I'm saying is that I actually did the acquisition because I want to turn the damn thing into a force for good, and increasingly so, something that is useful and entertaining and further civilization. That's the intention, and I'm glad you brought up this point because the goal is not merely to break even, which would be sort of stopping hate speech, and it's increasing positive speech and increasing things that you learn. Now sometimes those things that one learns are sort of unpleasant truths, whatever, but if something's true, it's true. So that's the goal. That's the aspirations. Make something that's useful, entertaining, and in the big picture, it is a force. Where we look back at it many years from now, we say, hey, that was a force for good for civilization.
I love it. Now, my last question for you before I hand it off is so the first century Roman historian Tacitus, when he first encountered the Jews, he accused us of being a lazy people. Why? Well, because our Bible had this crazy idea in it. It was the idea of a Sabbath, like one whole day a week where nobody works. The idea was it was like ludicrous to the Roman Empire, right?
But now these guys,
right? Now, in the end, like jokes on Tacitus because the Roman Empire collapsed, and now it's just like a meme on TikTok. While the biblical Sabbath is observed by billions of people across the globe. So like scoreboard. But aside from that, I'm curious what you're like one of the most productive people on the planet by any like objective measure. So I'm curious what you think about a revolutionary institution like the Sabbath. Is like a regular, recurring day of turning work off to focus on core values, like Rabbi Jonathan Sachs called it covenantal time. Is that an underrated, overrated, properly rated idea in a high productivity society? What do you think?
Well, I think the general principle of day of rest is a good one. Now, it's a principle that I can't say that I particularly adhere to. I take my ratio is more like, well, if I take 3 days off per year, that seems like about right for me. But I think for most people it is a good thing. And in the modern era, someone have extended that to the weekend, effectively two Sabbath days. There's a word for it called the weekend.
Right, mission creep.
Yeah, so in fact, it would seem that modern society has not really thought the Sabbath was a good idea, but decided we need to double down on that. And I think that's generally good. I think if you think about the sort of what's the sort of overall optimization, it's really saying area under the curve of human happiness. So if you take all the humans and their average happiness and how much happiness is that, and looking also into the future, so that we're not, because obviously one can do things that make one happy in the very short term, like some sort of narcotics or something like that, but then will probably not make you happy in the long term. So, but if you look at I think that's the thing we should be trying to optimize for is the total happiness of humanity, over the long term.
I love it, and I think that's a perfect place to hand it off to Asher Gold to bring on some other voices.
Thank you, Ari. Both you and Ben are staying with us for the second part of this conversation.
And thank you so much, Ron.
You're welcome.
So please, both you and Ben, feel free to chime in. Now, in order for us to be able to hear all of our distinguished guests, we will do it one guest at a time. One technical request to all of the speakers: after you're introduced, please unmute yourself so that we can be heard. So that you can be heard.
There we go.
Our first guest is President Reuven Rivlin. President Rivlin served as Israel's 10th president, and he is currently member of the steering committee of the European Jewish.
Is Rabbi Kripa speaking that, or I don't know.
Yeah, President Rivlin.
Hello.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm here. Good evening to all of you from Jerusalem and Elon. I feel at home once I call you Elon, because
Sure.
Elon is a very popular name in Israel.
Yes.
Okay, do you hear me? If you hear me, I can go on. And
In fact,
after listening to very carefully to your words, I have only one question, because we are facing the same problems in Israel. I don't know if you know, but throughout my career as a politician, as a member of the government, as member of Knesset, and as the Speaker of the Knesset, the President of the Knesset, and at the end, a leader or the 10th President of Israel after Shimon Peres, I all my life fought for civil liberties, including free speech, civil rights, and also the view as a cornerstone of a free society. I think I would like to ask you a question, and it's quite a tough question.
Sure.
Where you actually draw the line? Unfortunately, as we all know, anti-Semites are using free speech all over the world, spread, they are spreading hatred, racism, they are spreading really feelings of really bad feelings one to each other. So my question to you, Alan, is what will be, in your eyes, the case in which would also we consider and agree together as a person, if a person should not be banned or censored by his words, because sometimes in Israel also, and we run and we wish to run and we believe that we can run a Jewish democratic state, but we have along with us the Palestinians and people, Arab, Israeli people, and sometimes there are people in Israel who really believe that a Jewish democratic state means democracy only for the Jews, and that is something that we are fighting very, very hard and very, very seriously against those thoughts. And we are discussing many times where to draw the line.
Yeah, I know. Well, I'm open to ideas here. I think we're drawing the line currently. Maybe not in the best place, but it's not terrible. As Ben Shapiro was saying, his personal experience is actually it's improved. I'm aware of that old sort of trope of I have a Jewish friend. I don't have a Jewish friend. I think probably I have twice as many Jewish friends as non-Jewish friends. That's why I think I have some respect. I think I am Jewish, basically. And they use the X platform, and I was like, do you guys see anything? They're like, nope. It's like, okay, well, that's at least you want to look at things statistically, and then also just confirm that there's not some statistical errors with seeking as many anecdotal points as possible. So I think we're not actually in a terrible place. If we want to get to a better place, but like I said, ultimately optimizes for the good of humanity collectively. And I also mentioned, if somebody does express some anti-Semitic views within reason, I think you sometimes want to have that be said so that they can hear the counterpoints. And if they never hear the counterpoints, then they're going to just be hidden anti-Semites, and that's not that's perhaps worse. And a prominent example being Kanye. I've talked to Kanye or Ye many times, and said, because he sort of, he says he's very Christian, and sort of obviously, there's a reason why Judeo-Christian is often one word. It's based on a lot of the same things. So, and one of the principles of Christianity is, love thy neighbor like thyself, and basically have empathy for others, and turn the other cheek, which is do not hold a grudge or seek revenge, because if you do an eye for an eye, that an eye for an eye turns the whole world blind, as the saying goes. So there is actually great wisdom to forgiveness, in order to stop the cycle of retribution. And this is generally something I would encourage everyone throughout the world to think about, is because the natural instinct is revenge, retribution. But then you get retribution, then they get retribution on you, and you have this endless cycle. And we want to try to break some of these endless cycles of retribution. And that's part of the challenges. That's at the heart of many of the challenges that Israel faces. Is this feeling that this strong feelings of retribution among the Palestinians and whatnot. So. So I think some of the principles are very wise, and I can't say I think I've made some progress there, to be frank, with Ye, and that's perhaps better than just completely excluding it. You try to get to the bottom of where's this coming from, frankly, I wasn't clear on where it was coming from in this case. But I did trust that, we believe in these Christian values, then then you should, you know, you should act according to them. And so, you know, basically, can we turn an anti-Semite into someone who is at least neutral, if not pro?
Absolutely. I really believe that you, as a real somebody, a self-made man by all meanings, and be appreciated by the whole world, can do a lot by defining, of course, the help to draw a line in order to find the way, in order to make the real definition when it should, when we can allow it, when we are talking about civil rights, about free speech, and when we are talking about incitement. And that goes also in all over the world and all over the free world. We would appreciate really discussing those matters with you, because I really believe that you can help a lot in order to bring to the whole humanity into sense. And we are looking forward
Humanity
to
does
you in
needs to
Israel,
be saved.
because you are doing so much, and we are doing something in Israel that could help the entire world. And I hope to see you one of these days in Israel. And God bless you. God bless you.
Thank you. God bless you too.
Thank you. We'll now move to Rabbi Abraham Cooper from the Simon Wiesenthal Center. Rabbi Cooper, please. Rabbi Cooper, please unmute yourself.
Let's see, where do we go from here?
Okay. Rabbi Cooper. Okay.
I hear a very quiet voice.
Okay. Is that me?
Oh, perhaps.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So,
I think so.
Rabbi Shmuley Batach, please go ahead.
Hi, Elon. Can you hear me? Can you hear me well?
Yes, no problem.
Okay. First of all, let me just tell you, I served as rabbi at Oxford University for 11 years, and therefore hosted presidents, prime ministers, captains of industry. I say this sincerely, the famous Talmudic expression that words that emanate from the heart penetrate the heart. You can't fake sincerity.
Yeah.
I have probably never heard as nice a compliment about the Jewish people as two words, aspirationally Jewish, that you uttered before. I think you are indeed aspirationally Jewish. I'm going to respectfully disagree with my dear colleague Ben Shapiro. I think being Jewish is a wonderful thing, and most
Yeah, I agree.
We are creatively disruptive. There are
Yeah.
people who are catastrophically destructive, the Hitlers, the Stalins, and they hate those who are creatively disruptive. And
Sure.
you are a creative disruptor. Now, so instead of putting you in the defendant's chair, and that you have to defend against false accusations of anti-Semitism, which is itself very unfair, and that happens to Israel all the time. Israel has to deny that it's a Nazi regime.
Oh my God.
Let me say the exact opposite.
Not
that
the
you are-
my apologies.
Yeah. Isn't that amazing? Yeah. So it's not fair to put you in the defendant's chair. That's what your opponents are seeking to do. So you spend all your time. You know, in politics, they say that defending is losing.
Sure. True.
So let me rather talk about some of the creative disruption in terms of Jewish values that you, as a non-Jew who is aspirationally Jewish, is bringing to the world. I'm very into values. I run the World Values Network together with the richest black man in America, Robert Smith, the biggest black philanthropist. We created Values University to get people like you to do short videos, talk about your foremost values. There are three things that I wanted to quickly discuss. Number one, I'll go through them and then we can discuss them one by one. I love your emphasis on large families and many children.
So important.
I believe it is the last prejudice in society that you can look down at people who have a lot of kids as backward, as Neanderthalic.
I know it's terrible. It's yes. In fact, as you know, yes, I have many children, as did Father Abraham. So I'm like, hey guys, I'm actually super pro-human, pro-humanity. I love humanity, and I think it makes me sad when I suspect perhaps some people don't love humanity. Like, you know that there's an extinctionist movement? Like, there's a guy on the front page of the New York Times literally quoted as saying there are 8 billion people in the world and he wished it would be better if there were none. That's an actual movement. There's an explicit extinctionist movement, which is like saying genocide to all of humanity, which is so crazy I didn't know what to saw. And and it's somewhat of perhaps it's in some ways an ingrown toenail of the environmental movement. Now, I'm an environmentalist. I think I've done perhaps more good for sustainable energy than almost anyone. I don't know, simply one, Tesla. I mean, there's more electric cars than all of our competitors combined. So at least in the West. So, the sort of mad extension of environmentalism in the limit has people concluding, mostly implicitly, but sometimes explicitly, that humanity is a blight on the face of the earth, that a scourge that must be extinguished. Things that would agree with, kind of thing. Except he's more selective. But it's like you can't have that. This is total madness. We must. We should be expanding the scope and scale of consciousness. We should be extending to the stars. We should be an exciting spacefaring civilization, and to explore and understand the wonders of creation.
And the very first commandment of the Bible, of course, is to have kids, to appreciate the innocence of children, to appreciate the creativity, the fascination, and exactly, and everything that you said before about not having revenge in hearts. Our children are, unlike Freud, who saw them as these tiny little narcissists. In Judaism, we believe that there's this beauty to kids. I have to tell you that the view. The photos of you bringing your beautiful little son X to the meeting with Erdogan. Now, I'm not here to put you into an uncomfortable position. Erdogan is not, a big Jewish favorite. He's called us Nazis and Hitler, and he tries to be this strong man. And suddenly, you come to this meeting with him, holding this beautiful baby, and it's so disarming. Like, you're not ashamed to bring your son, your baby son, to a meeting with the head of state. And it was a tremendous statement of you leveraging the kind of credibility and power that you've amassed in order to promote the innocence of a child and being a father. And I love what you said, how you were raising him. Honestly, it was one of the most touching things I saw in the media this year.
Kids I think people, maybe if they haven't had kids, don't realize that kids are the source of the greatest happiness. Because, I think for the vast majority of people, they really love their children. And when you love something, you derive happiness from their happiness. So, it's when my kids are happy, that makes me happy. Unfortunately, when my kids are sad, it also makes me sad. It's not all, good. But if my kids are happy, it warms my heart and it makes me happy. So I actually tell friends. I have many friends who have no children, or perhaps only one, and I'm constantly urging them to at least have one or two, ideally three if possible. And in fact, I do this so frequently that people already know the subject matter when I'm about to say something. Which is you were trying to convince them to have kids. Yes, I am.
No, but I love. Instead of organizations like the ADL criticizing you, you have done more to promote this idea of children. You have to understand how important this is for Jews, especially. We are not a proselytizing faith. We don't have an army of missionaries. So unless we have large families, the Jewish people disappear. There were 18 million Jews before the Holocaust. 6 million were murdered. That still left 14 million. We haven't grown at all in those 80 years. We're still at 14 million. That's it. Because the Jewish birth rate is so low. So instead of the Jews criticizing you, you're the first person with real technological credibility who doesn't get up and say that the forward thinking of society is actually determined by a lowering birth rate, declining birth rates, which is what we hear all the time.
Yes, and I wasn't kidding earlier when I said that most of my friends are Jewish. Now they're not all sort of religious, but some of them are. But the a number of them have not had children at all, and I'm like, and there's such, and these are people who are incredibly smart and talented. They have a great heart. You want more of them in the world. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. And by the way, I wanted to
couldn't Einstein have had a few more kids? Come on, Einstein.
Yeah, good point.
humanity, man. You know, so.
And by the way, I mean, you have 10 kids, thank God. I just wanted to express also my sympathy in the really compelling Walter Isaacson biography, which I finished in one Friday night Sabbath. That's one good thing about not using technology. I read the whole book in a night, stayed up the whole night. When you describe losing your firstborn child in your arms, I got to tell you, I had tears in my eyes. That was very. Yeah. I'm sorry, very, very sorry.
No, it's sadder than I thought a human could feel.
Yeah, it was very, very. As a father of 9 children myself, it was very heartbreaking. The next thing I wanted to go to quickly is, so that's the first thing, Jewish values, kids. Second is, I was amazed at your conversation with Prime Minister Netanyahu, who I thank God known for 34 years, at Oxford. He used to come to speak to my students all the time. You have a right to kind of take credit for whatever might happen between Israel and Saudi Arabia, because the reason why MBS is probably thinking that he has to really get, and all the Gulf states, the Abraham Accords, moving away from a petrodollar economy is because of Tesla. You know, killing gas-driven, gas-powered vehicles is where the Gulf states started to think, oh my God, this is not going to last forever. More than any other consideration, I think MBS and the sheikhs of Abu Dhabi and Dubai and Bahrain and of course Morocco doesn't have the same kind of oil, but they're all thinking that electric cars are the future, and that's the biggest consumer of these fossil fuels. So just talk to me about that for a moment. Did you think to yourself as you develop? I know that you speak about sustainable energy, but did you also think to yourself as you built Tesla, and as you did you think that there might not have been a 9/11? Back then, Saudi Arabia was spreading Wahhabism all over the world, that all because of petrodollars. Did you think to yourself this might bring peace in the Middle East?
You know, it's funny you should mention that. I wouldn't say it was like. I did actually. Let's put it this way. It's certainly going to. I was well aware that it would change the geopolitical power balance. So that countries that had like a lot of oil obviously would not be as powerful in the future as in the past if we have a sustainable energy economy that is using electric vehicles, and that's rather obvious. Is that if you change
take a break.
To a sustainable energy economy, then oil becomes less important. Now, I don't think oil becomes. There's always going to be some role for oil. It's just not going to be the primary means by which we power, transport, and electricity, in terms of oil, gas, coal. So it's not going to completely disappear, but it will shift the power balance, and that's already happening to some degree, and will happen to a greater degree. It might have played a role. I should say also that generally when I have met with world leaders, I have, for as much as my opinion is worth, I have generally encouraged them to have peaceful dialogue with other countries, and I've encouraged heads of state to reach out, not through their sort of foreign ministry necessarily, or it's often somebody 3 levels down in the foreign ministry, but to reach out head of state to head of state directly, and perhaps some of that has been helpful. I hope so.
Well, I actually believe the rise of electric cars, which is synonymous with you, is the principal reason why the Gulf states.
Uh-oh.
Okay, we will now move to the next speaker.
I think we might have lost you.
Yeah.
Well, maybe myself. Is it all?
We will now move to the next speaker, to Nathan Sharansky, the chair of the...
My apologies. I think we probably need to make some tweaks to the UI on this.
Of the Combating Antisemitism.
I'm requested. I got something to say.
Yeah. We will now move to Nathan Sharansky, please.
I got something to say.
Okay, thank you. Welcome everyone.
So y'all what I got to say. I'll let y'all know what I got to say.
Opportunity. So guys, as some of you know, I was born and lived and fought in the Soviet Union, where it was clear that there is no freedom of speech and a lot of anti-Semitism, and it goes well together. Soviet dictatorship would not permit any freedom of speech. It will do everything that there will be no Jewish or any other identity. Their religion was opium for the people.
Yeah.
And it was clear that anti-Semitism is needed to the dictator to control its own people, so they need external and internal enemy. And so Jews are very good internal and external enemy. So for me, anti-Semitism was natural part of the dictatorship. But then when I moved into the free world, went out of prison and became member of Israeli government, I was surprised to find out that anti-Semitism on the left and the right can be the part of the free world, the world of the free speech. And of course, the big shock was when 20 years ago, the so-called Durban Conference, the first conference against racism, became the conference of agreeing that there is one regime of apartheid and there is one regime of racism, that's Israel. And then I had a big problem of arguing with the leaders of the free world that anti-Zionism also can be anti-Semitism. And then when they were not agreeing, I proposed my so-called 3D principles: demonization of Israel, delegitimization of Israel, and double standard towards Israel is like demonization of Jews and the double standard and the delegitimization, demonization of Jews. They are all tools of anti-Semitism and modern tools of anti-Semitism. As the result, the international definition of anti-Semitism, in fact, recognized this deep connection between anti-Semitism, old and new, demonization of Jews, and the state of Israel. So anti-Semitism today on the left is mainly concentrated on anti-Zionism and demonization of Israel. Anti-Semitism on the right is mainly concentrated on classical demonization of Jews. And it's very important to fight these both hatreds simultaneously. In fact, what Cam is doing, go from one state to the other, from one mayor to the other, from one university to the other, saying, recognize this international definition of deep connection between anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism. And I have to say that it's very difficult for all the organizations to fight simultaneously on the fronts, but it's very important. And now coming to social media, we had a dialogue with Facebook, how it is important that the Facebook will prevent the dissemination of modern anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism. And they were, I remember our dialogue with Sheryl Sandberg, what they really agreed that denial of Holocaust is recognized as anti-Semitism and should be removed from Facebook. But it's very good, but it's a very, very narrow part of the modern anti-Semitism. But when it comes to recognizing that, or to following international definition of anti-Semitism, delegitimization of Israel, let's say the statement like that Israel today does to Palestinians what Nazis did to Jews, it becomes very, very difficult. So what my question to Elon is, I'm not a specialist, but can we between these two extremes, looking for the algorithm or looking for the removing of the persons for speaking anti-Semitism, can we do something like algorithms with communal notice, I think it's called, when somebody says something like this on internet that Israel today is not Soviet, there will be notice that take into account that this statement and the international definition is anti-Semitic. Is it possible to have such an algorithm?
Yeah, I believe that's what we currently regard. There's quite a long list. I'm not sure the exact number of terms, but it's a very long list of terms that are, I think unequivocally anti-Semitic, and those terms are, cause the algorithm to basically not promote posts that have those terms. One can sort of get into some very fine-grained debates of like, well, should this term, so it's not like there's a bit of there's some things which are sort of more black and white, some which are a gray area. I think the general bias thus far has been, even if it's in the gray area, that it has diminished reach. That's the current situation. So, but like I said, I think there is some value to not being draconian, meaning that if somebody does sort of express views that could be considered anti-Semitic, that there's, on our platform publicly, that there's then an opportunity for people to convince that person to change their mind, or present facts that they're perhaps not aware of, or rebut absurdities that they currently believe.
But from my experience, as I was asking my students, you have some criticism of Israel at some point. Try to say it without demonizing and delegitimizing Israel. And they always succeed if you make an effort. You can do it. But people are not making such an effort because the society doesn't view it as their criticism of Israel is something so legitimate that even if you deny the right of Israel to exist, it's not anti-Semitism. So can we bring into our education or into our culture that yes, denial of the existence of the whole state or demonizing the state and turning it into something close to Satan, it is anti-Semitism, because many people are not ready to call themselves anti-Semites, but are very happy to call themselves anti-Zionists in the most extreme way.
Yeah, I mean, I'm to be clear, very much. I'm pro the Israeli state. This notion that Israel should not exist is just obviously absurd and outrageous, and it's certainly one of the most anti-Semitic things that one could possibly be said, in my opinion.
Iran, you're absolutely right, but not only there is a state, Iran, which speaks about the world without Israel, but there is a huge internet recognition of this position. You can see it on the universities, you can see it among professors.
You're right.
Exactly on the right. So I am fully for freedom of speech, but how we deal with this?
No, well, the crazy thing that I'm seeing is how strong on the far left is the anti-Semitism movement, or especially the anti-Israel movement. Yeah. It's actually very strong on the far left, including at the top universities in America. And I've heard this now from many people. This is it's quite surprising. But among the tenets of the far left is an anti-Israel tenet among much of the far left. They view Israel as an apartheid state that should not exist, and that's a serious concern. I was talking to someone who's not a friend, but was telling me he was in high school in New York, actually at a prominent high school, and he was saying that the state of Israel shouldn't exist, and that the Mossad was the one that blew up the trade towers, and I'm like, what? What do you? This is insane.
What?
And he's just clearly getting it from elite high schools and I think the same is true in elite colleges in the U.S. And I'm like,
I want to only one note and I finish because I know there are some other people who want to talk to you. One note that today's anti-Zionism on the left reminds exactly the Soviet Union's propaganda against Israel, and there's something to think about how this neo-Marxism is coming back to American universities. That's
no, it's a major concern. I'm very worried about America here, where in fact it's in addition to anti-Semitism that they're getting anti-American. Just the kids are being taught in elite high schools and colleges to hate America and hate many things, and to question the right of Israel to exist, And I'm like, what on earth is going on? We need to fix our education system because they're being indoctrinated with this madness. So, and without any historical context as well. So, the people being told like, oh, Christopher Columbus was just basically pure evil. And it's like, well, America wouldn't exist without him, and you have to evaluate people's actions by the morality of the time, not impose our current morality on something someone did 500 years ago. Because I imagine that 500 years from now, they might regard us all as sort of savages, basically. So, you have to, and if you have a major historical figure like Columbus, you have to look at all the things he did, and some of them are bad, but frankly, America wouldn't exist without him, and that's why we have a day dedicated to him. So, but they're being taught that basically America is bad, that the land was taken from Native Americans, and in effect, they're saying America doesn't have a right to exist. And this is crazy. So, and I'm trying to figure out how to fix this, because something needs to be done here. Our kids, and many parents are blissfully unaware of this, by the way. They don't know that the amount of propaganda they're receiving. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
We will now move to Professor Alan Dershowitz. Professor Dershowitz, please.
Well, thank you so much. I have been studying the issue of free speech for 70 years, and let me start with a statement that many will disagree with. No country in history has ever really tested free speech, has ever seen whether the marketplace of ideas works, whether we can really have a society without censorship, a society where every idea is tested on their merits. This cannot be a right-left issue. I was the chairman of the Anti-Defamation League Civil Rights Commission, was active in the ADL, no longer am, but the issue has to be one of trying to live with complete and total free speech, which is why I'm such a fan of X and of you, Elon. By the way, my son's name is Elon too, because you are the first person who has really tried. Thomas Jefferson didn't try, Alexander Hamilton didn't try, Abraham Lincoln didn't try. They all compromised. You are trying for the first time an experiment, a great experiment, to see whether we can survive with the marketplace of ideas and without censorship. And I want to state very unequivocally, we should not be drawing lines. That's a mistake to draw a line. That's an image that I want you to reject. We should be drawing instead a circle. I call it the circle of ism equity. And that is, we create a situation where all thoughts and all ideas are created equal. That we don't make judgments on basis of whether something is anti-Semitic or pro-Semitic, pro-Jewish, anti-Jewish, pro-Christian, anti-Jew, Christian, pro-right, anti-right. We create a circle, a symmetrical circle, in which things are outside the circle, things that are illegal, abusing children and that kind of thing. But anything else has to be within a circle. So if it's permitted for one ism, it has to be permitted for the others. That's exactly what universities are failing to do. They're creating an asymmetrical line on which favored groups fall on one side and disfavored groups fall on the other side. And Elon, this is an incredible challenge to you.
Yeah.
You create a circle of ism equity. Can you create a situation, and I offer to help you do this, to sit and figure out what are the parameters for what kind of speech can be censored, what kind of speech must be permitted, without focusing on the content of the speech itself, without focusing on whether it's right, left, or anything of that kind. It has to be something that's absolutely neutral. And then I think you'll find very few people will want to censor, because they'll realize that they can't have free speech for me but not for thee. That's out of the question. Every time they try to censor their enemy, they will be censoring themselves if we have a circle of civility rather than lines which are easily manipulable. And no idea should be censored. Oliver Wendell Holmes put it very well when he said, every idea is an incitement. And we can't draw lines between advocacy and incitement. We failed every time we've tried to do that. And so my suggestion to you is don't listen to the critics. Don't listen to the ADA. Don't listen to any of the people, even many of who are speaking today, who want to draw lines that are self-serving, that serve the Jewish community, that serve Israel. I don't want to draw those kinds of lines. I'm in favor of no prior censorship except things that are overtly illegal.
Yeah.
Let the marketplace decide and make sure that there is an opportunity for everybody to answer whenever there's any argument or any idea that is deemed to be hate speech.
Oh, we
You
got
can't draw a
JFK
line on
live.
hate speech. One person's hate speech is another person's love speech. You have, I think, the right idea to open up the marketplace of ideas, but I think you need some assistance, and I'm happy to provide it with my 70 years of experience, as to how to create that circle of civility, that circle of ism equity, because it will be self-enforcing. Nobody can censor the enemy when they know that they're going to be censoring themselves as well. So that's my contribution.
Yeah, and I should say we are experimenting with this idea of freedom of speech but not reach, meaning you can post anything on the platform, even if it is hateful, provided it is lawful. But there's a separate question of then, is that promoted or not promoted? Does that enter our recommendation engine? If so, with what prominence? And our current approach is to say, okay, well, we're not going to, if something, you can say things that are hateful but legal on the platform, but we are not going to recommend that to others. That's the current approach that we have.
I think that's, I mean, you can see how that can be abused and become a form of censorship too.
I know. I agree. It's not perfect. I think advertisers certainly have a right to say what content they'll appear next to, because that's their right too. But not to dictate what can be said on the platform.
I agree with that. I think there's one other danger, and the danger is reflected by the people who have been selected to join this conversation. I think there's a danger of this being perceived as a right-wing reaction to left-wing censorship. I myself am somebody who's a liberal. I identify more with the left than the right, but I oppose strongly efforts by the left as well as by the right to censor. But it would be a very serious mistake if X was perceived, or you were perceived, as some way, implicitly, favoring the right over the left. That's why you have, for example, I would suggest that you have a small group of people, again, I would volunteer to be one of them if you would want me, who represent different perspectives. I would represent left perspective, to make sure that you don't drift over to the right. Today, the greatest danger to free speech comes from the left. Let's be clear about that.
Yeah, I agree.
Violence comes from the right. The right shoots synagogues. The left is educating our future leaders. I know. I taught at Harvard for 50 years. I know who our students are. They are the former president, the future presidents of the United States. So the left poses a far greater danger of censoring free speech and of skewing the marketplace
You bring
of
up a
ideas.
great point, my friend.
But I think X has to be perceived and in reality as perfectly symmetrical. And that's
that
why
is our aspiration. That's our goal. That is our goal. Now, the reality of it, for anyone who's paying attention, and I'm sure you saw this, was that prior to the acquisition, Twitter was very left and getting even more left. So they had a massive thumb on the scale on elections, frankly, worldwide, on the side of left, and would suppress Republican voices at a rate, I don't know, sometimes perhaps an order of magnitude greater than the Democrats. So there was a tremendous amount of bias. Now, in moving, and then heading for a system where it's like, okay, there's a massive left-wing bias, is that to a system that is more inclusive, and that could, where at least say 80% of America, perhaps the world, could be on the platform and feel that it's a level playing field, and it's fair to people with a wide range of views. That's our goal, and that's what we're doing. Now, given that it started so far off the left, it is accurate to say it's moving right because it's moving to the center. So it's technically true that it's moving right. Not that it is suddenly popped over and instantaneously become, from a left-wing propaganda arm to a right-wing propaganda arm. But but necessarily, if it was pretty damn far on the left, it's going to have to move to the right in order to get to the center, and that is our goal.
With all due respect, I disagree with that. I think
Okay.
you move to the right in order to overcome the left. You move to the center directly, and you create.
We are moving to the center directly. I'm just saying, as Einstein would say, all motion is relative. If you start on the left and you move to the center, you're necessarily moving right. That's what I'm saying. But our goal is not to move to the right. It is that we are moving right in order to get to the center. It has to be.
Well, I would put it differently. I would say you're moving to the center without regard to. You're moving away from the left to the center.
Correct.
But I think
Which is perceived by the left as moving right.
right. But if you look at the people who are on this call, if you look at the co-chairman of all this, I think it is fair for some people to perceive this as a movement.
Sure.
You don't want to be perceived that way. You have to, in some ways, I don't want to say lean over backwards, but you have to make it absolutely clear that you are the only platform in the world that doesn't take a left-right position, a pro-Jewish and anti-Jewish, a pro-Christian, a pro-American, that you are a platform that is pro-free speech. You're the first people in history ever to try to create a true marketplace of ideas. John Stuart Mill advocated it. Jefferson advocated it. Nobody has ever achieved it. You're in a position where you can achieve it, but don't destroy it by being perceived as a right-wing reaction to left-wing excesses. You must be perceived as being from the center, and everything you do is designed to create a neutral space, a marketplace of ideas, where the only answer to false speech is true speech, and where the marketplace determines how much the speech is spread out, how many people listen to it.
Yeah.
We have to have more confidence in our ability to answer bad speech. I accept that challenge in my life, and I don't want to censor my enemies.
Yeah, absolutely. And to be clear, we actually have massively broadened what can be said on the platform. But we have, and perhaps you disagree with this, but we have tried to guide our algorithm to promote things that are positive or the things that are negative, to frankly to have a love bias, if you will. I realize that perhaps this is not in terms of what can be said, but in terms of what is promoted to others. And I, if somebody wants to say accuse me of saying, well, it's wrong to have a slight, maybe a bias towards love and positivity, then I'm rightly accused of that.
Look, I agree. This is a long conversation. I'd love to continue it with you offline, because I think it can contribute to helping make this into the first true marketplace of ideas.
Well, thank you. I think we are almost, our overlap in agreement is very high. So I would sort of value your opinion in the future, because this is something that we should debate frequently. And like I said, I think the overarching goal is how do we make this platform serve as a positive force for humanity? And I think the free exchange of ideas does result in a positive force for humanity. And if somebody feels like their ideas are, even if they're wrong, that they're not being sort of squashed and um, censored, then I think because I think being squashed and censored breeds hatred and resentment, and simply also then sends people to perhaps hate echo chambers that are outside of the mainstream, and that's I think where you get some of the sort of 4chan based people who go kill a mass shooting because they're in some sort of hate echo chamber.
I agree, and I think you're the only one out there who can do that now, and I think we all should be sacrifice our own interests, even on issues like anti-Semitism, to a far greater humanitarian interest in promoting open and complete dialogue, complete free speech in the marketplace of ideas. Only you can do that.
Well, thank you. I'll do my best here, and your sort of advice would certainly, and that of others on the call would be very much appreciated. I believe one is always wrong to some degree, and we simply aspire to be a little less wrong over time, and eventually we can have to get to a really good place. But yeah, like you said, the idea is like, well, how do we make this a positive force for humanity, where we increase the sum of human knowledge. It's a place where people, if their ideas are based on false premises, especially hateful ideas, that we can perhaps point out that the reason that they have this hatred is because of things that aren't true. It's like it's like actually you're hating this or that group for things that are not true, or perhaps in some cases things that happened a long time ago for which people are no longer, it's like it was their great grandfather or something, that did the bad thing. So, that's why I say, like, I think there's a lot of wisdom in forgiveness and turning the other cheek. And when I was younger, I actually thought, well, turn the other cheek, isn't that a sign of weakness? But I think it's actually a sign of strength. Now, by the same token, if you turn the other cheek and you're just getting slapped all day, and that's at a certain point you stop turning the cheek. But the general notion of forgiveness is incredibly important. Don't hold some grudge for a long time. In some cases, centuries. It's like let's let it go. To make another to take a quote from the New Testament, the truth shall set you free, as John said. The truth shall set you free.
Truth shall set you free. Amen.
That the road to moral goodness is, in my view, truth and curiosity.
Okay.
And if you care about the truth and you're curious, I think that a natural outflowing from that is moral goodness.
Okay, we're now moving to the next guest, Rabbi Menachem Margolin, Chairman of the European Jewish Association, please.
Yeah, good afternoon. I have the privilege to be the chairman of the European Jewish Organization, which is one of the leading organizations in Europe combating anti-Semitism and fostering Jewish life, representing hundreds of Jewish communities from across the continent. First of all, Mr. Musk, I really would like to thank you very much for the time you spent with this topic. I must say I feel comfortable saying that I have no doubt that you are against hate speech and anti-Semitism on X. And actually just having this conversation is important because it shows your commitment to the issue.
Yeah.
Having said that, and before the questions I have for you, I have a request for you. And I would say on behalf of the Jews of Europe, on January 22nd, in honor of the International Holocaust Remembrance Day, we are taking hundreds of European political leaders, Jewish leaders, and Holocaust survivors to the Auschwitz concentration camps. And I would like to ask you to join us for this visit, to walk there, to feel it, to understand it, because I think that this will be an important experience after which you will be able to feel for yourself the great sensitivity of the Jewish community to the issue of anti-Semitism and where it can ultimately lead to. What do you think about this idea before I go to my questions?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I'm an avid student of history. So, I'm very well aware of the the Holocaust, and the sort of Auschwitz and Dachau and whatnot, and it's the all the things that happened that were terrible. So this is certainly not new information for me. So I mean, I don't need to visit Auschwitz to understand. I get it.
Well, not to understand, but to feel. It's quite different, I would say. I would appreciate if you could have it in mind and consider it. I really believe that to make something that you did not feel before, but just please have it in mind. But back actually to the main topic.
I would say that I do feel it, to be clear. Like you said, I've seen the pictures. You see the pictures of the baby shoes, and, that kind of thing, and it's like unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one is obviously full of profound sadness to see that all these children were killed, and still have some of their belongings and see what remains.
Unfortunately, things that are clear to you, not necessarily clear to everyone. And therefore, again, I would say your visit to Auschwitz would be a very strong statement, not only for your personal commitment, but we all understand the important attention that will be once you are there. So I would appreciate if you could have it in mind, because I really believe that your visit to Auschwitz, with all the attention that will come with it, will really could contribute a lot to the Holocaust awareness and the struggle to combat anti-Semitism. But back to the main topic.
I will seriously consider it. I just wanted to say that I'm very knowledgeable and about the subject, and I've seen many pictures, so it's not like I'm ignorant in any way here. But it could be helpful, perhaps, as an example to others.
I appreciate it. But back to the main topic. I think that we can all agree that the discussion here is not really about the importance of the fight against anti-Semitism versus the importance of maintaining freedom of speech, but on making sure that there is no spread of anti-Semitism whilst maintaining the right to freedom of speech. Mr. Musk, over 180 human civil rights organizations from all around the world sent you a letter asking your platform to adopt the IRA definition of anti-Semitism that had already been accepted and adopted by thousands of governments and public bodies around the world. As far as I know, they have not received an answer so far. And my question is, will you be willing to adopt the IRA definition on your platform?
Well, I wasn't aware of that this has been sent to us, but I'm happy to take a look at it, and I suspect it's probably sensible, and it may already be what we're doing. So I apologize for not responding. I wasn't aware that we'd received such a thing. So, I think it's, why don't you just basically, reply to my text or something with a link to that, or reply to my post on the X platform, I should say, with a link to that, and or share it otherwise, and I'm happy to take a look at it.
Yeah, I'll be more than happy to do so, because actually having algorithms that monitor anti-Semitism is great, but what's very important is to know what is anti-Semitism and what should be monitored and perhaps being removed. And, as it said a minute ago, I do not think you are anti-Semite.
It's the ridiculous thing ever. I mean, honestly, it was like, this is like the most absurd thing I could have possibly imagined, frankly.
I know that, Mr. Mark, but you own and manage a platform which unfortunately many anti-Semites use to generate anti-Semitism. We have had Kenya, we have had the Jewish space laser, and daily there is more and more. So the question is, how could you bring this gap? I mean, how could acts better reflect your own values toward the Jewish people?
Well, I think, as was articulated earlier, I think my values do match that of the Jewish people, perhaps not everyone, but I think most. Just knowledge, reading, understanding, debating, these are all Jewish values. And very much agree with those. The Jewish people are learned people. People of not of one book, but of many books, and I greatly admire that. As a rather bookish person myself.
No, but Elon, thousands of students and youngsters in Europe report to us on the demonization, the experience of social network when they identify themselves as Jewish or supporters of Israel. And that's not only just on social media, but it's also actually after they translate into actual physical harm. What can be done about that from this perspective?
Yeah. Well, like I said, if our system is not working in some way, we're certainly happy to fix it. I think it's work. And perfection is not a reasonable expectation. To be clear, when we've got 500 million interactions per day on the system. So if one cherry picks here, one can find the 500 millionth worst thing that was said, and it's statistically speaking, it's going to be pretty bad. But that is no way reflective of the vast amount of communication that's occurring. I think we're doing a pretty good job, and we care about doing a better job over time. As I said, the operating principle is serve the greater good of humanity, and that if people look back 10 years, 20 years, or even longer, look back on the actions that we're taking here with the X platform, that the general conclusion is it was a net force for good for human civilization. That's my goal, and I think we're making progress in that direction.
Okay, we'll now move to Michal Kotter.
Yeah, but if we're also open to criticism, that's and I value critical feedback because critical feedback allows one to be less wrong. So I always worry and sometimes reflect: am I losing my feedback loop? Am I, to quote Scarface, getting high in my own supply? Because that's a danger that one faces. Now, I actually find that the X platform is helpful as a source of criticism of myself. So there's lots of people who do not like me actually on the X platform, and make that clear. And that if I say something, they will trash me or contradict me, or in some cases I might actually say something that I thought was true, but then turns out I was inaccurate. What I said was inaccurate, and then I get community noted. Which isn't, by the way, I think community notes is very powerful for adding context and actually combating disinformation. I pay very close attention to the notes, the ones that receive prominence, and I have to say it's really working quite well. Just so that everyone on the call understands, broadly speaking, how the way the community notes works is that people who historically have had different views based on how they've reviewed other notes must agree on a note in order for it to be surfaced. This is actually very, very helpful and very difficult to gain. And there's actually a white paper on community notes that's, I think, very interesting to read. All the community notes software is fully open source. All of the ratings are fully open source, meaning you can, based on the code and the data, you can actually recreate why a node surfaced or didn't surface. Transparency, I think, is a key to trust. So if something says sort of potentially, some kind of Holocaust denial thing, then they will get community noted. And this applies, by the way, to heads of state. It applies to me. It applies to our biggest advertisers. We've actually lost some advertising money because, in a few cases, advertisers made claims that were not entirely accurate, and it got community noted.
Okay.
But the community notes applies to everyone, even if you're head of state or the principal owner of the platform. I think it's a very powerful tool. So overall, I think things are actually pretty good. But I'm not saying they're perfect, and we want to work to make them better.
Okay, we will now move to Michal Kotler-Wunsch, Israel's Special Envoy for Combating Antisemitism. Michal, please. Okay. For some reason,
you know what? With respect to the visit to the concentration camp, I'll say I give it a tentative yes, because I actually do need to travel to, as it is, I need to visit out the Giga Berlin factory, because our team there has been doing amazing work, and it's just probably time for me to visit there anyway, and so I'll consider it a tentative yes.
Okay, we will now move then to Rabbi Cooper. Rabbi Cooper, please.
Yes, thank you for having me on. And it's been probably the longest anyone has been able to mute this rabbi, so it's a very humbling experience. So thank you for that. Also, I already sent you now the letter asking for you to consider the IRA definition. I was one of the lead signatories. I think there are 110 Jewish groups around the world that sent it. So if you can take a look, I don't have to go over the territory again, but it is an important decision to make to giving a working definition.
Sure.
Simon Wiesenthal.
Okay, I'll definitely take a look at it.
Thank you. Appreciate that. So I worked and knew with Simon Wiesenthal for 29 years, and in 1980, he was asked at a Midwest university, could the Holocaust happen again? This was his answer. This was a man who lost 89 members of his family in the Nazi Holocaust, barely survived himself, and became the famous Nazi hunter seeking justice.
Oh, Rabbi was giving some truth, man. He was giving some good history.
I think we lost Rabbi Cooper for some technical reason.
Can you hear me now?
Now we can hear you. Yes, please.
All right. Not exactly, but I worked with the late Mr. Simon Wiesenthal for 29 years. He's our namesake, and he was asked in 1980 at a university, could it happen again? Could the Holocaust happen again? His answer was, if you have organized hate, a crisis in society, plus technology, anything is possible. And when he was referring to technology, he's referring to the technology that the Nazis had, radio, newsreels. Today, we wouldn't even consider it a technological blip. But he said, had that technology been around in 1492, no Jew would have survived in Spain, no Catholic would have survived in England, and no Protestant would have survived in France. So I think it's important, at least for us as an establishing approach. Also, since you spoke a great deal about the idea of change and repentance, if you haven't read it yet, you should probably read his book called The Sunflower. It goes to the heart of the questions that have been raised today. I want to take you, since I'm the second oldest person, I think, or third on this call. 30 years ago, we established a project here at the Simon Wiesenthal Center called Digital Terrorism and Hate. And I actually went to see the first founders of Twitter in that building in San Francisco. And basically what they told me back then was, at the beginning, we just want free speech. We just want the marketplace. Everybody should be heard. We're totally against censorship, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Despite our sending them examples of how organized racist, bigots, haters, and terrorists were leveraging their platform, it took the United States congressional hearings, I think Dorsey was the guy at that time, where they told him ISIS, at its power, was deploying 200,000 tweets a day. And that was finally what got their attention. And if I may just say, because I'm not a technological wonk, I would like to actually send my technology people up to San Francisco to meet with your folks. But when we talked, someone mentioned asymmetrical. It came out a couple of times. Here's the way we approach it. I think on the fight or the discussions over free speech and censorship, especially what's happened in the last couple of years with fake news and everything else, we're looking at a different asymmetrical war, which is we can meet any of these hateful ideas and the conspiratorial nut jobs in the marketplace of ideas, but what's actually going on is they're leveraging access to the platforms, including yours, in order to market their ideas, in order to recruit, in order to fundraise. So if we're in a debating society, I'm all with you, with Alan Dershowitz, etc. What we need to look at together, based on your algorithms, is what tweaks need to take place. How do we make sure Goyim International does it, which it currently does use the platform in order to send people to Telegram, and then other folks will take their hateful material that's thrown on the lawns of millions of Americans across the United States. How do we make it more difficult? How do we degrade their marketing capabilities, not what it is that they have to say? I think that's a core piece. And one other thing I'd like to bring up is that I also wear a second hat. I've been with the Simon Wiesenthal Center in the last 45 years. I head up our global social action agenda, but I'm also now a member and currently the chairman of the United States Commission on International Religious Freedom, which is a congressionally mandated sort of watchdog group. And last week, I hosted in the U.S. Senate hearings on what's just going on in Eastern India, as an example, because we look at 28 countries. And I want to say here, from wearing both of my yarmulkes, I salute you for what you've done for the women of Iran, for what you did for the people of Ukraine, in making sure and seeing that you have a worldview, that you want to help give voice to the voiceless. And I think this is another area that we should be talking about. I'll be in touch with you privately, but I'm going to invite you to keynote one of our hearings on technology and what's going on in China and elsewhere in Asia, Vietnam, et cetera, But if you notice the article in the Washington Post the other day, how the folks in India are trying to occasionally shut things off. They know that it's being used to spread riots and all the rest. But at the end of the day, I can't even talk about the details, but the horrors of those riots only came to the attention of the world because of social media. So the idea of also being there, sometimes it can be 3 zip codes that may be shut down, but the idea of continuing your leadership, and I think this is the most important part, with all due respect. I mean, I like the discussions and debates. I don't rabbinate. Both of the youngsters you had, the first one, Ben, he graduated our high school, and I'm a proud product of Yeshiva University. But you're an extremely powerful world player. And so, Mr. Wiesenthal said it, everybody says it. Words have consequence. He married his childhood sweetheart. He was an architect, and his entire world was destroyed because he was a Jew. So for us, I know you know it. You are, I think, naturally drawn to the Jewish people, and we deeply appreciate it. And ideas do count, which is important. We're not talking to the Wizard of Oz. We're talking to a fellow citizen who, frankly, is more powerful than a lot of heads of state. So both from the point of view of hopefully adopting the IRA definition, give our technological experts, of which I am not, a chance to sit down in San Francisco with your people, because they have specific things they want to bring up.
Okay, sure.
And finally, you should look at our commission, because we look at human rights through the lens of religious freedom. And when you take a look of what he will do to try to break those people who have faith, defending those faithful is the job of religious people, people who are agnostic, and people whose religion is not to believe in God. That is the litmus test of our day. So, I hope you'll come down to LA to the Museum of Tolerance. We'd love to take you around. But most importantly, we're in this for the long range, and we are inspired and guided, frankly, by the amazing humanity of a man named Simon Wiesenthal.
No, and obviously he was a great man, no question about it. So, it's worth noting that, part of what really drove, and I'm sure I'm telling people on this call who already know it, but I think maybe the public doesn't. But Hitler and the Nazis were extremely censorious. They dramatically they obviously they exercised censorship on anything pro-Semitic or anything that would counteract the anti-Semitic arguments. And they would even have SA brown shirts shouting down, like literally going to colleges and shouting down anyone who was trying to make an argument in favor of the Jewish people. So it's like the Nazis loved censorship big time. So that's just a interesting point. We have to give anyway. But like the overarching goal here is to create a force for good, not a force for that improves the amount of love in the world, not and diminishes the amount of hate. So improving the happiness of humanity, and like I said, I think we've made some progress, and we will continue to make progress and continue to solicit negative feedback, critical feedback that can allow the system to be a better force for good. And we're just doing so. Obviously, just need to be careful that we do not, as the saying goes.
Thank you so much, everybody. That was phenomenal.
I just wanted to say, that while the road to hell, frankly, is obviously paved mostly with bad intentions. Once in a while, there's a good intention paving stone, and we just need to make sure that we don't, in sort of seeking to promote, love and understanding, that in the process, if we have if there's too much censorship, inadvertently creating a backlash that increases the amount of hate. And I think we want to keep this dialogue going, and we want to keep having critical feedback and keep looking at ways to better. And I think just having this dialogue is good. And for those that harbor hatred for any group, whether it's Jewish people or some other group, I think we can promote understanding and promote forgiveness and promote and help them understand that actually some of the things they believe that are causing them to hate another group are perhaps false. That's really what we should be aiming for.
Thank you guys so much for joining us. This was fantastic. Thank you so much to my co-host Elon, to my co-host Ben. Thank you so much to all the guests who joined, and thank you most of all to Elon. Thank you so much for having us on this platform, for engaging this discussion.
You're most welcome. Thank you everyone for your great feedback, and it's an honor to speak with everyone. And, a very intelligent group. So thank you for setting it up.
Oh man, I missed it. Oh man. Listen. I was going to request to speak. Only thing I wanted to say to everyone that was on that last meeting, if you see this live one day in your life, Listen, I hope you have an amazing day and don't let anyone mess it up. The main thing we're all going to get, the main way that we're all going to get through this is through positivity. Hope you have an amazing day.